can see. Well, then let's take a step back, topic-wise, and talk about smart cities and urban mobility itself in our panel. Feel free to choose the second chair already, and I'm going to introduce the other two panelists. We welcome on stage Jason Whitted, Digital Innovation Lead, Smart Cities, Amazon Web Services. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we also welcome on stage John Schönbeck, Director Strategic Partnering Designworks at BMW Group Company. John, also warm welcome to you.
Hello.
John, you can take the first place. Jason, you take the second. Marcel, the third, just to make sure that the name behind you fits you. Perfect. It's such a pleasure to have you all on this panel, especially having Mercedes-Benz and BMW on one panel to sit. That is amazing. So
I'm in between them.
Yeah, perfect. That's good. That's why we seated you there. No, I'm just kidding as well. So maybe for those of you that join us now for the first time in our panels, we have decided to do something very special. So I have prepared 4 topics here, but unfortunately we just have the time for 2 of them. So let's start our wheel of topic right behind me. And by chance, we're going to choose 2 topics and that we're going to talk about. So I hope it works. Here we go. These are our 4 topics. New urban mobility in smart cities. Do the ideas settle for future mobility exist? And we start with first topic will be reshaping mobility from vehicles to infrastructure, and we have a quick look at the second one as well. I just have to look at my cards here to check. The second one will be transportation the urban way. Okay. Perfect, but we start with reshaping mobility from vehicles to infrastructure, what is also very, very important. Let's talk about the utopia, which is an utopia right now, of a smart city. What technologies from your side, what vehicles, what systems do we need to create this, hopefully in the future not be an utopia anymore city? Who wants to start from your person? Yeah, please, John, go ahead. From your point of view.
Obviously, we heard a lot about e-mobility today, and e-mobility gives us a great chance to really shape the city of the future. Think of cars today with combustion engines. They're fumey, oily, and they're products that you don't really need to or want to combine with buildings. With e-mobility, it's completely different. We could come up with completely different concepts integrating the cars and our future e-mobility platforms into the buildings. You could drive with cars in the buildings, you could shape buildings differently. Imagine today when an architect, an inner city architect, plans a building, there's like 50% building, 50% parking, which is insane. I mean, working at BMW, I know what it means to drive up the parking
especially lot. In Munich.
Exactly.
We know that.
So thinking about what e-mobility offers with regards to the interaction of mobility and static architecture is enormous.
Absolutely. So, Jason, what do you want to add?
First, I just wanted to thank everybody at Shift. This is so exciting to be here, and you know, we all haven't been.
You feel very comfortable in the middle of them, right?
Yes, absolutely. And then, you know, you said utopia. Utopia gets me a little skittish. One of the great things about the cities of the world is they all have a unique character and their own culture and their own thing. And you know, sometimes with this idea of utopia, you kind of lose that and try to standardize. And then the other thing, when we think of cities and we think of mobility, it's really about the people, right? And mobility exists to help get people, I think someone said it earlier, from point A to point B. And so really, as we're thinking about what is the future of mobility, it's really going into each unique city, understanding the different
Absolutely.
Components of that city, and then the unique needs of the people, and then designing solutions that fit them, as opposed to trying to get the city and its people to conform to what we come up with. So I think that's just a big mindset to keep at the forefront.
Absolutely. Good thing is that we will later have on stage Lynn, who's talking about human-scaled mobility. So that is exactly what you just mentioned. Marcel, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I mean, first thing, most important thing also for us is, of course, the e-mobility, emission-free at driving. That's the first thing. But what is also important, especially in terms of our commercial use cases, is the limited space and the traffic flow. Because I mean, everyone knows that when a parcel delivery vehicle is parking second row, blocking the road. So we have to because the infrastructure in the cities are there, we can't change them totally. So we have to look at how to optimize the usage of the current infrastructure. And there are some smart things, and data comes into place to like optimizing parking space and to find, for example, good spots to locate a parcel car to then deliver the packages by foot. So there are a lot of ideas to support the existing cities.
Maybe one more point, like,
Yes,
and
sure.
that's a common goal here. Free Now is a multi-modal mobility app that basically caters great mobility services with regards to e-scooters, e-bikes, electrically driven vehicles, but also ties by the coding from our respective companies and also by the design of our respective companies, ties automotive transportation to public transportation. So there's also a link where we can contribute to the transition between private transportation and public transportation. And of course, our respective companies work hard on designing the right concept for the cities.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And then one more part on that. We're at a mobility conference, so I think you're all familiar with the idea of the 15-minute city, the walkable city. So there's those trips that you want to take. I want to go to the beach. I want to go to a concert. And then there's the trips that you need to take. I need to go run this errand. And to the extent that there's more grocery stores and there's the things that you need to access every day that you can go and walk to without having to get in a car or without having to access different types of mobility solutions. I think that cuts down on some of those shorter trips and helps to cut down on the congestion and the other things that we're seeing in cities.
Absolutely. What we also need to talk about when talking to all of these is data. Alexander mentioned that in the panel before. There is no smart city without collecting data. How much does a smart city clash with data privacy?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Do you want to go?
Please.
You sure? So I think you're right. Data is a foundational ingredient, right? If you kind of open up the pantry at home and you want to cook something, with technology, data is one of the key ingredients.
Absolutely.
And with mobility, privacy becomes an issue when you have really localized data, and that can get kind of intimate and have some privacy issues. And there's been a lot of work in this space. There's assessments like the Mobility Collaborative, Data Collaborative, that has put some work into some guidance that can help people when you're going and trying to do something, whether it's an algorithm or you're putting work together. It's kind of a checklist to think about, am I doing something that I didn't mean to do that could have some privacy concerns, and just helping people that might not necessarily be data scientists or be thinking about that to just have another perspective.
John, please.
There's a scientist called Francisca Bria, and she was the CTO for Barcelona, basically helping Barcelona to get a new digital platform. And I admire her work, and she said, like, it's not about bringing up the latest and best apps, but it's really about establishing a digital platform for the whole society, for the children, for the young, but also for the elderly, that is not business-driven. I mean, there's a lot of social platforms that we use and that also keep our communities together. But she worked with the city of Barcelona, I think, for 3 years on a social community platform that is not business-driven. So that would be another approach with regards to data and with regards to how we can contribute to a better city with regards to a changed mindset of data.
Yeah, and I think you always have to recheck how big is the benefit at the end of the day, right? Marcel, something you want to add here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first step is to make data transparency. And the customer or whoever is walking around the city, they have to know which data that I generated is used for what purpose. So that is the first step, and they have to choose actively if they want to contribute or not. And if they contribute, of course, we have to fulfill all regulations, but that is a basic premise for everything what you're doing or what we are doing.
It's always the same when talking about data and giving data away. Everybody brings the example of Google Maps, right? Everybody wants to use it, but nobody wants to share where he is. So that is a point we need to talk about. But I think people are getting more and more open in being okay with sharing their data for having a great value back. also, I think.
I think there's also, like, if you're in the middle of Times Square, you kind of assume there's cameras and there's things going on. But as that gets closer and closer to the last mile in your street and things like that. So there's, if you were to ask people, do you want to give up all of your data? Maybe not, but as people are going through life and you're just trying to do things, you'll click and accept, maybe even without reading some of these policies. So, just making sure that folks aren't doing sketchy things is important.
So, from your point of perspective, who is the global leader when talking about smart cities right now, today? Tough question.
Did you say smartest cities?
Yeah, smart city. Who's the global leader? What do you think?
I mean, there's a
Which is a good example by now from what we can do now.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of indexes. Like The Economist just came out with one earlier this summer. But I think, my sense of smart cities, it's really not a competition. It's about each city being its best self. Every city, again, has its own unique things. Like some cities are prone to earthquakes. Some cities will never have an earthquake. There's different resilience, shocks and stresses, all of these things. And so really it's about a city being its best self. What I think some of those indexes, and what I think we learned from cities like Barcelona and Singapore and Berlin, is really about culture, right? Do you have that culture of innovation that allows you to be open to new ideas and new technologies? And are you able to work with your population and include people, be transparent, all of those things? I think those cities that are perceived as leaders really have figured out how to build a culture that supports innovation.
Yeah, just to add what you just said, there's actually no competition, because it's not about, at the end, it's not about winning or losing, in my opinion. It's about role models and getting more and more cities involved in that progress.
Absolutely.
And that process, because at the end we all have to tackle the climate change and want to make cities more livable. So that is the main point, to get as many cities on the road to a smart city.
Yeah. John.
There is a tendency that we said we don't need smart cities, we need livable cities, as you just said. And that means, and that is not the solution, but probably one solution, that the city is more concentrating on single neighborhoods that are organized in a special way. So you're not looking at the city as a whole, but you're looking at neighborhoods that are connected. And the neighborhood as such, being a little one small module, is easier to manage, is easier to somehow get right than a whole city as such. So,
absolutely. So, yeah, where do you think is Germany in that game? John, Marcel, where do you see us?
I mean, I'm not an expert in that way to really rank Germany. I would come back to that we are working closely together with many cities. We had cooperations with Berlin, for example. We had currently working together with London, with Helsinki, with Netherlands, you name it. So many cities are going to be active in that area. And of course, it's also about regulations. And because we were in the past, we had to go to the US, to the West Coast, to try our autonomous vehicles. But we are in a very good, connection with the city and the state to improve the overall regulation. That we make good progress in Baden-Württemberg, for example.
I mean, in Europe, we have a lot of emergent cities, meaning cities that were built over centuries, thereby not so organized like a lot of planned cities in the United States. So I think our effort in Europe needs to be a bit higher to organize ourselves, just because the way how our cities grew. But a little example, you were just mentioning Berlin. We had a little program together with the city of Berlin where we took a neighborhood and we arranged that all the cars were parked somewhere else. So it was a car-free little, almost like space. And then we tried different scenarios and different experiences together with the people in the neighborhood, offering carpooling and car sharing. So the mobility was there, was a completely new concept, and the freedom to socialize in a different way changed dramatically. Of course, this was just a tryout. We managed to basically work with the neighborhood over the period of 2 weeks. And it was a very good, I would say, pilot program that might be repeated in the city of Berlin and in other German cities. It just proved that it's possible. and it made the aspects and the advantages tangible.
Yeah, and we do have some really good examples in Germany as well, Kaiserslautern, for example. So if you were interested more in that, there is a pretty nice event taking place, I think, in the middle of October, just around the corner at the City Cube. It's called Smart Country Convention, where we talk 3 days just about like smart cities, smart government, and as you just mentioned, we need role models. It's the same. We always have a partner country there, taking it as a role model instead of taking it as a competition.
Yeah.
So that was a really good sentence.
The other thing that obviously bears mentioning, I'm sitting between
Yeah.
two representatives.
I see.
So Germany is one nation, is a global exporter of thought leadership on mobility and a whole bunch of different smart cities technologies. So I think that bears mentioning. And then just, I don't know if there's anybody from Berlin here. I love the branding, just the whole marketing campaign of the city, branding the identity, which obviously is a big part of building that culture. So I don't know who did that, but I think that's really impressive.
Okay, perfect. So as we just have 5 minutes left, let's come to the second topic, which was transportation the urban way. How can we make transportation smart for humans and for vehicles? What do we have to think of? How can we make it smarter?
I mean, at the end is again about data, I think, because we are convinced that individual mobility will play an important role also in the future. For people transportation, but also, of course, for also commercial transportation, because just think of parcel delivery or the supply chains to restaurants, kindergartens, so that has to be active also in the future. That's why we think we have to make sure that these structures still exist, but of course in a much more sustainable way. So that's why we did the Sostenir to show it is possible to still let cars and vehicles in the city but contribute to a more livable city at the end.
To do transportation smarter, I think as we all do in the automotive industry, you need to think out of the box. There was a concept presented which we call adaptive transportation. So you have one means of transportation that acts differently with regards to its surroundings. So it's for example, there's like the electrified motorcycle, as we call ambi-bike, and through the technology of geofencing and smart card reading, the vehicle knows where it is. And for example, when you ride the bicycle through town, it goes 25 kilometers an hour. If you go to the suburban areas, you can drive up to 40 kilometers, and if you are outside, completely outside of town, you might ride the bike up to 60 kilometers an hour. So there's an adaptive mode based on a very smart technology that basically offers actually a known vehicle that behaves in a completely new way. And that is not the answer, but one of the answers that we have and hope to contribute to how to make transportation smarter.
I think there's never the answer for anything that we are discussing on this stage today. Absolutely. So do you want to add something?
I was just going to say, again, working backwards from the customer and making transportation mobility easier, the smartphone, just thinking about payments. I don't know if any of you have ever used the New York subway system, the MTA, but they used to have these cards, and like if you had to like perfect the swipe, and now being able.
But as you are a tourist, you like that. If you live there, you hate it probably.
Well, you get kind of graded.
But they changed it, right?
Yeah, now you can just tap, and all of the things, City Mapper, and being able to go and figure out, being able to understand before you leave your home or your office, the normal way that you usually travel today isn't going to work for you today, and here's some opportunities to do something different. So just all that information that's now accessible that can help reduce the stress and inconvenience of travel and make it easier for you. I think that's been a dynamic shift over the last decade.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
Just to add one comment, I think that is a very important point, because at the end we have to talk about like seamless integration of all means of transportation. But we as an automobile manufacturer, we don't say just drive with your car, but you have to have the opportunity in a convenient way to use the mobility solution that is perfectly fitting for that current need. And that has to be convenient, because I think otherwise we won't convince people to change their mobility behavior.
Yep.
Absolutely. So as we all know, we have a limited space in the cities for private vehicles, for trucks and so on. Talking about congestion, how can smart cities help here?
You know, one thing, there's a woman, again, going back to New York, Jeanette Sadik Khan. She was the Department of Transportation Commissioner under Mayor Bloomberg, so about a decade ago. She wrote a book, Street Fight. If you haven't read it, again, it's a few years old, but it talks about some of that repurposing of streets and sidewalks in public places to build more livable cities and to you know, kind of change things around. And again, that's not necessarily smart. I mean, a bike lane, a protected bike lane isn't necessarily smart technology, but it's definitely part of a smart city. And so what are some of those ways to use the physical space to increase mobility, but also make cities more livable, I think is...
Okay.
There's a huge change. Think about how many charging stations we have in our cities. And we're not talking about charging stations in the future, but we're talking about centers that allow you to charge car, but then also to do other things. And by doing that, we will build these buildings up in the Z-axis, and we'll be able to basically park and charge more cars on the same space than before, and thereby we probably or hopefully contribute to take a couple of these cars standing on the side of the road or charging at the side of the road today in these buildings.
Good idea. I was thinking, just last thought from my side, because I can see time is running already. How far does the borders of a smart city really reach? Talking about the rural areas, what do we need to think of? How can we, make sure they are included at the end of the day? Because for now, we are talking about this, like the big cities, the huge cities, but we have so much rural area around. How can we make sure that they are part of it? What do we have to think of? Charging is one.
Connectivity, obviously. You know, there's a big push, certainly in the United States. There's new infrastructure money to help ensure that all communities, particularly rural communities, have access to high-speed internet, which helps to support their ability to participate in the digital economy and world, as well as connected devices.
That's true.
There's a good chance to, and it has something to do with charging, probably also in the later day with hydrogen, to generate mobility hubs. These are centers that could decentralize cities, because these hubs could also have themes. Okay, you charge, or you fill up your car with hydrogen, but then probably you have a co-working space up above, or you have a gym. So you could have, depending on what the city needs where, also in the outskirts, you could really model different mobility hubs with additional themes, so to speak, to engineer the city in a better way.
Perfect. Then thank you very much for all of your thoughts so far. I'm going to check very, very quick on the audience. Maybe we have time for one question, if there is one burning question from you guys. Nobody's raising a hand. Well, then everything is answered. Perfect. We did our job. John, Jason, Marcel, thank you very much for being with us today. This is your round of applause.